Ooh, man, I should have worn my hat today. Welcome to the very last and final um episode of the stream of the Western Star Movie Podcast for the spring. This will continue, obviously, in the fall because obviously I will keep doing this until the fall, having the end of the best movies of summer 2023. Hopefully by the end, and then maybe do some reviews on like if whenever it starts, because these tend to start a little bit later. So I'm just curious on when these things are going to start. But yeah, we had a good, fantastic second run, and we're going to have a lot of good things. We haven't announced. I have an announcement to make that I'm going to try to do this this sort of thing on over the summer, hopefully with some editing techniques that I'll learn. So welcome to the podcast. This is the final. We're gonna do the best and worst the worst to best films of April 2023. We have Wild season episode 7 and 8 to cover, the finale of that series. And we also have I obviously have my announcement to talk about over the next couple of days. So I just want to know if I'm on the right episode. Is this the right one? Okay, yeah, this is the right one. So welcome. So let's get started. We're gonna talk about the best and the worst movies. I also have this to talk about. I think going into the future, if I want to give a grade, I'll just be like, okay, this is the grade I'm gonna give it. I think obviously the way I'm looking at it, it's reversed, but you can tell what it is. So, and I'm gonna give grades to the films on the best to worst list that I didn't talk about yet, just to be like, yeah, these movies are good and these movies are terrible. So I think I saw like 7 movies this month. I gotta check again. Hold on a minute. So I saw one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. I saw 7 movies. I missed out on 2. I'm gonna try to get those 2 this weekend, which are The Covenant, Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, and The Pope's Exorcist. But the rest of these films I did see. So let's get started and talk about the movies that we have in store for us, and hopefully to have fun with. Let us begin. In Dead Last, no surprise for me is actually it would have been something else, but Ghosted. This movie is the definition of a movie that is quite possibly the most forgettable thing I could think of. And it's a shame because you have the director Dexter Fletcher who directed Rocketman, one of the better movies of 2019. You have the writers of Deadpool and apparently a screenwriter of Top Gun Maverick and a couple of them from Spider-Man trilogy like Spider-Man Homecoming, No Way Home, Far From Home, and it stars Chris Evans and Ana de Armas, 2 of the most likable actors in the world. And somehow it's this bad. I didn't care for a single character. I thought the chemistry between these 2 actors was off, which is so weird to me because I liked what they were doing. I liked their chemistry. They were obviously in The Gray Man together. They were in the first Knives Out movie together, which was so damn good. And it's confusing to me that a movie where they're actually literally a couple and in an action movie comedy could have this little chemistry. It blows my mind to think that. Another huge problem that I have with the film is that it's quite possibly the most generic action movie I've seen. You've seen chases in cliffs, you've seen action shootouts in restaurants, and it just all feels so familiar that we have seen before. The biggest thing is the fact that there's a chase sequence that I could literally pinpoint out Mission Impossible. But there's also a scene in the film where they do a lot of cameos. Like it just turns into cameo palooza, and then there's one extra cameo towards the end of the film that honestly I didn't even know was happening. And I guess this is like Chris Evans like best friends group scene. I don't know. The awkwardness of this film cannot be too much because it truly is. It truly is a very unforgivable mess of a film. The performances are good, and there's like a couple of good shots, but it all just feels like it's on a green screen. It doesn't feel real. The relationship constantly is on and off. They would be fighting with each other, and then they would love each other, and it just is so off. Um, it easily is the worst movie that I have seen this month, and for grade purposes, I didn't review this last weekend because I was talking a lot about CinemaCon, and this is the year that is shown. I'm sorry about that, but we're not going to talk about that. Probably going to talk about that Friday. I'm ready to give. I gave Ghosted a D. I think it's a really bad movie, but it's so forgettable. Next up at number 6 is Peter Pan and Wendy. Again, another film that is much like this film, forgettable. And I watched it like 2 days ago. So that easily gives the worst idea that this movie is a big pile of crap. When it comes to live action Disney movies, they've had some hits, they've had some misses. Pinocchio was just awful. Could not stand that movie. And for some reason, they decided to go even another step further by giving us Peter Pan and Wendy, a movie that's streaming only on Disney Plus. Now, this could be cool. The director, David Lowery, directed Pete's Dragon, which I thought was one of the better live action movies from Disney. Also, you have Jude Law as Captain Hook. This movie could be fine. Unfortunately, it is everything that I knew it was going to be, but it's not the worst film I have seen. There's definitely worse ones out there. Mulan is a mess. Pinocchio is just atrocious. This movie at least is fine. It is at least decent in what they're trying to do, which is telling a story of Peter Pan. And there have been so many Peter Pan movies. Like there's been a different one from Warner Brothers called Pan, which bombed in the box office. Then there was I think there was a one live action film that they did in like 2003. And there's been so many other iterations of Peter Pan that it constantly is like reminding me, why is this story being tackled so much? And this movie deals with the fact that yes, growing up is tough and you don't want to grow up, but someday or another you're going to have to. They try to do something with Captain Hook and giving him backstory, which I thought was actually pretty interesting. By far, the best part is Jude Law, and the girl who played Wendy, I thought was really good. Beyond that, virtually every other performance I found to be extremely bland and mediocre. And I don't like to hate on child performances, but mm, didn't work for me. Didn't work for me at all. And it's frustrating because again, this is in preparation for The Little Mermaid, which by the way comes out in 3 weeks. And I have heard early screenings have said nothing but good reactions. I'm hoping that's what the critics think and the audiences do because I am nervous beyond belief. Also, the movie references the fact that, hey, there's these casting things that happen in the film. For one, they have said that Peter Pan is Indian, and apparently in the original one, he was white. And he looked like a ginger. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that the way the film writes Peter Pan's character is downright boring. He feels kind of like a which to me, hold on, let me do that again. He feels like a okay, no, yeah, so it blurted it out. But it feels so he feels so like pretentious with himself, and he's constantly gloomy, which I don't have a problem with. I think the performance was also very on and off. I didn't hate the performance, but the rest of the children actors felt off to me. And what's weird is that they actually reference like, oh, there's the Lost Boys, or actually there's some women in there. There's some women, and there's a line in the film that says Wendy's like talking to these lost boys, and he's like, and she's like, "But you're not all lost. You're not all boys." And then one of the girls is like, "So?" He's like, "Well, I just said it doesn't matter then." And I just thought like that's modernized Hollywood now. They take random casting choices and piss off the internet, which honestly is hilarious that they even included that. The CGI is competent. Sometimes it feels really off, especially a scene when they're flying in the city of London, England. It looks like a green screen. The biggest also disappointment is that there's no crocodile. There's not a lot of crocodile, which is hugely disappointing because there's one scene in the crocodile. And that was like one of my favorite lines. It was always like that animation style. It was so hilarious, but in the end, it just feels disappointing in every single way. And I felt like this film could have been better. I'm gonna give Peter Pan and Wendy a D plus. Next up, we move on to one, two, three, four, five, six. Okay. Renfield. I talked about this in my review. I said that the film's first half was really good. I felt like it took a good direction. It was a fun direction. And then the second half of this movie hits and it turns into a completely different film with virtually no attempt to merit the storyline. They talk about like there's a scene where it all of a sudden turns into like, oh, Aquafina's character is now being hunted by all this police officers because there's all this crime, and it feels so out of place. Like it felt like two different movies that were like 45 minutes long. Was like, hey, I got a vampire movie where Nicolas Cage is a vampire. And one other guy's like, oh, I got a crime movie about police and, the corrupted police officers. And there's like this mob gang. And then they were like, oh, okay, cool. Let's just mash them together and make a movie. And that's what it feels like. This is easily by far Chris McKay's worst film. But I wasn't expecting much. I was just expecting to have a good time. And when I heard that the reactions early on were like, oh, they're really good, I thought I was getting something good. Unfortunately, it feels like the movie is two films in one with some truly awful CGI blood, particularly one scene in which he takes two arms and like kicks the body and the arms fall off, and like the CGI blood that is spewing out of these arms. It was so bad. It was so green screen. It was so digital that I was dropped. I looked at my dad and I was like, that's CGI, by the way. Could not look at it. The performances are admittedly good. The characters are sometimes on and off, and the story just feels so out of place. So again, this is middle of the pack when it comes to overall films, and it confuses me. 4, we have Super Mario Brothers. Now, again, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but there's a lot of people here that went to see the Super Mario Brothers movie that I hang out with in rooms. And when I talked about it on the spoiler review with Issa and Anthony, which by the way, shout out to Issa and Anthony for the podcast. I think I'm going to be a whole guest on Friday if you guys tune in for that. But I talked about how this movie had one job, and is to be entertaining. I didn't look into this film with the story. I just said if I'm entertained with this film, I'm going to have a blast. The nostalgia got me. It was really fun to look at. It's a visually stunning film. Like this is Illumination's best looking movie ever. The character arcs felt a little bit rushed. The story is not particularly that good, but the action sequences are great. The humor itself could have been worked on better, but it really is about the relationships with the brother of Luigi and Mario, the chemistry between all these characters. It worked. Animation's great. and it hit all the right Mario notes, like the Mario isms with all the Easter eggs that you see. I did get roasted because Issa said, "Put some respect on my shy guys," and I called them little turds. Again, there's all these references in the film that it could have potentially been like, "Oh, it's just Easter egg palooza. It doesn't work," but it actually did. And I'm so happy the movie made $1 billion, and we're gonna get a sequel, and it works. I think that this movie will work. If I do have to say again, I will complain about the fact that look, the Take on Me scene was terrible. I don't care how many people tell me this. Take on Me was not a good song choice. Could have been Welcome to the Jungle. Just saying. I already gave you my score for Renfield. I already gave you my score for Super Mario Brothers movie. So now let's go to another film I didn't give you my score for, and that is Evil Dead Rise. This film is crazy. And crazy in the way that you expect it to be. Like one of the best parts of this film by far is the gore and the creepy factor. They nail it super hard in this film, and I think it works really good. Also, the two lead performances, Alyssa Sutherland and Lily Sullivan, were fantastic. I think that they were amazing. The violence and gore that ensues in the film was very well made. It felt good. Like this is a good horror film. And the first time I was watching it, and I tried to picked out a lot of the pinpoints of the story and the characters. It's like, yeah, there's some things in this movie that didn't work for me. But all that being said, this is a very good film and much better film than what I think a lot of people will go into thinking. Because this movie was originally supposed to go to streaming, and then they were like, "No, we're gonna do HBO Max." Turns out the movie is a great hit. Same thing with Smile. You know that movie Smile that came out that I really enjoyed. It ended up doing really well in the box office. It made $200 million, and it works. It just worked for the movie that they were doing, and I honestly really enjoyed myself watching it. And I understand if people have opinions like, "Oh, the characters weren't developed, the siblings were bad, the siblings were stupid." Like, there's one brother in the film that is constantly making the dumbest decision, and he just stands there like an idiot. And so, like, you're kind of like rooting for them to get killed. But overall, I had a really good time with this one. I'm gonna give Evil Dead Rise a B+. Next up, we move on to the top two films, and this is where I had a choice. I could have went with one or the other, but I picked one over the other in many reasons retrospectively. And this is why I am picking Sisu as my second favorite. Sisu is a movie. Now, if you haven't heard about Sisu, I'm going to tell you all right now. Um, Make sure you go like stop what you're doing and go watch Sisu. It's like this. A lot of people are comparing it to John Wick because it's literally from the studio that brought you John Wick. This film does one thing wrong that is not an A+ compared to John Wick Chapter 4, which is by far an A+. I mean, there's really nothing nothing wrong with that movie. Um, and so like, what the hell was that? Um, but this film is about a old retired general who is in Germany, a Finnish commander, and he has this gold that he finally wants to. He lost his family years ago. He lost his daughter. He lost his wife, and so now he's going to the bank to cash in all of this gold that he found. And there's this line of Nazis that come around and is like, "We're gonna take your gold, old man. We're gonna kill you." And then he just comes out and is just like brutally killing people. And the movie knows right away. Like the movie makes you know right away. Like this guy's a badass. He is very tough. He's very forcefully brutal, and that's what I liked. The action sequences in this film are so violently brutal that they got me really a lot of times. They were very good. They're not like really grotesque in like the worst way possible where it's like, oh god, that is just like you can't look at the screen. It just is like I understand that people are like, well, what is this? Is just like John Wick, but it's different. Like nobody is so much different than John Wick, and it's so weird. With this film, it's a much different concept, but it works for it. The action sequences are admittedly superb. The performances are really good, and the jokes. There's like a couple of like hidden jokes in there that are like really funny. Um, and it's kind of like a combination of like a lot of things, like standing up for people, standing up for like what you believe in. Because in the film, there's all these like women that I guess one of the commander of this like these Nazis are like he's like doing things to him, and so like he helps the Sisu guy helps him out, and so there's a lot of like movement sort of things. Also, what's interesting is that Sisu is an old Finnish word that means immortal. Apparently, they say like there's an immortal thing called Sisu, and we don't know if he's alive. We don't know if this guy is immortal or not. And they just are like, yeah, he's immortal, and you do not want to mess with him. And it's like scaring the Nazis. It's really weird for me to say that right now because of like the way it is portrayed. But trust me, if you don't see this movie, this film's going to be incredible. It is truly a remarkable experience. It feels so good in every way, and I enjoyed this film. And I'm going to give Sisu an A, which leaves me to my final topic, or my final review and grade or film that I rank, and that is Air. Air to me is the best movie of the month. It was directed by Ben Affleck, who directed a lot of other Oscar movie films, and this movie is no exception. This movie is incredible. It is superbly directed. It's well acted. Ben Affleck is amazing. Matt Damon is so good. Viola Davis is the woman. The Woman King is amazing. The Woman King is amazing. She is herself. The Woman King herself, Viola Davis, is amazing. Chris Tucker is amazing. And my dad doesn't really like Chris Tucker. He feels that he's not a lot of funny. He really enjoyed him in this movie. He's actually really good in the film. Marlon Wayans is in a scene. He's really good. Virtually the acting in this film is so incredibly good. And it tells a story really about how Nike became the company that they are, and it works. I think this movie entirely worked for me. If I had to say a negative, I would say that really there's one scene where it's like, okay, the movie can end now, and it's like, oh, you're still going. Okay, that's cool. But I really, and that's just a minor nitpick. This film is truly incredible, and this figuring out the story, I was never bored. I was never bothered by anything else. I thought that this film was truly the movie of the month, and it's probably going to be one of my favorite movies of the year, and it might stay within the top 10 by the end of this month, the end of 2023, and by the end of when I do my first show for the fall podcast, it might be in the top area there. So there you guys have it. That is the best to worst April movies. Now let's move on to the next topic, shall we? And that is this. Um, I don't know if I want to talk about this next topic. Well, no. I was gonna try to bring up the WAGA strike that's happening where the writers aren't getting paid that much, which I mean, if you're getting paid, then what are you doing? If you're getting paid, that's good. But if you want like I want $20 million, don't do that. Just accept. I understand. Like, there's a lot of people out there, and a lot of actors are like, "Yeah, this is ridiculous. Why aren't these people getting the damn money that they want?" And I don't care. I don't care. It's not my opinion. I don't go to this piece, bro. I'm not a protester, so I don't go and be like, this is wrong. I'm not involved in it, but this is wrong. So let's do that. Let's do that. That's not me. That is not me at all. Um, so I don't care. Do I think that's wrong? Yes, I think that writers should be paid more because they're given this the opportunity to create something so good with all these films. And I swear to God, if it delays, if it harms the filming industry, where like certain writers just like, I'm not going to write anything, and films start to get pushed, I'm gonna get really pissed. Like I'm gonna get really pissed, and I'm not gonna like it. I'm not gonna like it at all. And TV shows especially, you know, which is probably why I think the Wilds should come back for a season 3. You know, Prime Video. Speaking of Wilds, good segment. Good segment, me. We're gonna talk about Wild season, the final 2 season, what? See episodes. Episodes. We're gonna talk about the last 2 episodes, and here we go. So we have episode 7, the 17th episode overall. The premise of this one is that the girls relocate to the hot springs, but the journey shatters the group, and Leah is driven into further madness. The boys come to a truce, but it's upended when troubling secrets about their most controversial member comes to light. So, from the previous episode, Tony or Martha had a huge meltdown because she accidentally saw a bunny that was dead and its babies were harvesting its organs, and she was so distraught by it, she ran away and she killed the baby rabbits. So Tony's trying to like soothe Martha on the island. Shelby offers to help out, but she's not getting any response of Tony. And they meet, they catch a river, and a huge river, and this causes a lot of problems. It's like, how are we gonna get across this river? And Tony is like, so you're just gonna give up on her? You're just gonna give up on her? And the tension between these girls is getting really bitter. It's getting really abrasive. It all is so compact and so nerve wracking that it does feel like the movie or the series, the episodes picking up right away. So the girls are uneven what's sure, and Rachel is surprisingly calm about it. And she's just like, yeah, we're gonna take her, let's just take her to the hot springs. And so they see a river, and Leah hallucinates again. Like I said, with the river, she hallucinates and sees this piano. When carrying Martha across the river, she falls into the water, causing panic. And Dot manages to bring her to the surface. Eventually, they get her to the hot springs, and Tony is like, "Yeah, Martha, I'm gonna help you out." And Rachel offers to take over because she's like, "Oh, Tony's so emotional right now." It's like, "Okay, I'm gonna do this for you. You calm the f down and sit over there." And then Leah's just like takes a dandelion and just like blows in her face like, and she's like, "The f- is wrong with you, freak?" And then just a whole bunch of insults happen, where Tony calls Leah a head trip. She accuses all of the girls of letting Martha and upset a few of them. Um, so there's a lot of tension there, which is rough. So Gretchen tells Seth that he cannot blame his behavior on himself. She tells him it's the wounds from his mother that have led him to his actions, and she wants to give him a second chance. So we actually see a little bit of the flashback of why Seth is such. So I took the mic off so you can't me talk about anything. So we see flashbacks show that there's a younger version of Seth. He's spending time with his mother at an amusement park, and then his mother leaves the family home abandoned, and he's with his father. There was a lot of pent up anger in the younger Seth. In a flashback, teenage Seth helps his drunk friend Jules later on, which, by the way, It's good that we have a backstory, because if we just like Seth is just like this really like this character that is just really unlikable, and he's just kind of like really bad. It's good so that we know, like, okay, he actually has a story behind why he's acting like this. So he helps his friend Jules, who's drunk. The next day, Jules talks about her excellent decision making while drunk because she went to his place. They have a kiss, and he tells her he can't continue, and he freaks out. And he tells her she has a lot of drama, but Jules gets on top of him, and they hook up. And then we are shown a montage of. I'm gonna take the mic off. Well, we saw a bunch, and eventually, it turns into an obsession. So, on the island, Raphael wants to know the next move on the exile camp. Then, Bo and Scotty turn up and reveal that it has been toxic at the other camp. Seth thinks they should go to the other camp, propose a truce, and end the division. Seth decides to talk to his stepbrother Henry first about the plans, and he also tells him that his mother loves him. And so the peace conference begins with the other camp, and the proposal is stronger together. So back forward to the other side of it all, we go back to the girls, and Leah talks to the man she's hallucinating about, Ben Folds, her first crush. And the man lists out all the crushes she had. She calls herself pathetic, but the man disputes that. And Leah plays the piano with him and then swims in the sea. And her mental health is worsening, and the other girls are not really like aware that this is a huge factor. Shelby finds Tony and thinks that she blames her for what happened to Martha because she froze when she saw a boat. She asks Tony if there's a way back to where they were, but there's still no response. Tearfully, Shelby leaves a jumper for her and walks away. Shelby then walks into the jungle and cuts her hair. And so Fatten's walking through, and she's like, "Oh God, I see your hairstyle." And then she tells Shelby everything's gonna be okay. It's like, "Oh, who am I to guess? I'm not gonna guarantee that." So then Fatten shows Shelby what she's been obsessing over and gives her a piece of paper. She looks surprised at what she sees. Now, this is the point where it's like, okay, she looks surprised, but are you sure she's surprised? Because I'm pretty sure she might know something. So that's for that. So then we cut back to the island, and um, both camps are now in a peaceful resolution. But Josh is struggling. He's like, I don't trust this guy. I still don't trust him, but they're going to let it slide. So Kieran gets annoyed at Seth and reveals to the group that he kidnapped his ex girlfriend's cat to get her back. And everybody starts to be like, oh, Jules? You know, it's like, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, no, I know Jules. I thought you said you guys broke up or she left you. And so we show flashbacks of Seth hurting Julia. And Henry realizes that Seth lied and hurt Jules. He calls him a monster, and they have a huge fight and asks Seth to leave. Once again, Seth is exiled. Seth asks to be extracted, so he is picked up by a boat organized by Gretchen. He attacks the man who picks him up and takes the boat. He fears that Gretchen will be disappointed in him. Gretchen then narrates how she doesn't give up on her children. She tells Daniel and Dean that her experiment did not fail. It was a bad male behavior. She calls it a mother intuition. Someone tells Gretchen's son that he got a call from his friend Leah from a retreat called the Dawn of Eve. And then we move on to the finale of it all. This is where everything comes to play. Ah, Jesus Christ. Okay. So, I'm just going to read through this real quick. So, we flash back. Tony is at a bar watching Shelby sing. Shelby is shocked to see her there, but she continues to sing. Gretchen tells Shelby she was astonishing with her singing. She asks her to choose either a red or a blue gummy bear. This turns out to be a dream as Shelby wakes up in a facility. On the island with the girls, Shelby and Fatten investigate the jungle after Fatten's discovery. They think they have a map of the island that will lead to other secrets. They see something at the top of the tree, so Shelby climbs up, but she falls, breaks her ankle. Shelby doesn't want to give up, but she's hurt. So Fatten tells her to stop and is like, okay, I'm going to do it for you. But Shelby's like, she's desperate to help the girls, get the girls off the island. She's doing it for Tony. And Fatten comes back down and it looks like a radio. Shelby concludes that they are not alone on this island, and Fatten tells Shelby they shouldn't tell anybody about the radio as it's a big deal, and it will turn the group's world upside down. Tony wants to try again by putting Martha into the hot springs to see if it helps take her out of her catatonic state. Dot and Rachel help her out, and as for Leah, she's still in the ocean. She's talking to the man she's hallucinating, and she's in two minds about returning to the island, but then she realizes she'll do anything for the girls, and the man calls her, "You're a child." And Leah gets very angry, and she's sick of the older man calling her that, and the man tells her to prove it to the others so they believe she isn't a child. And so Leah returns to the girls, and Fatten dries her down with a towel. Fatten calls her the strongest person she knows, and then suddenly a helicopter appears in the sky, and the girls are taken back in total shock with the weirdest CGI helicopter scene I have ever looked at. So, the finale then moves on to the boys. Kieran tells Josh that everything has gone to on his watch. After plenty of tension, the boys decide to let loose and throw these frisbee around. But then Seth returns and he shows the group the boat. He tells them he found it, but in the previous episode, we saw him attack the man picking him up. The group is surprised to hear that the motor works. Seth wants to use the boat and tell the Coast Guard about the others. However, the group feels that it is risky because they do not believe Seth will help them. They want someone to join Seth, so Raphael and Kieran volunteer to join. They head on set, however, the motor stops working and Kieran loses his cool and fights Seth. Seth throws him into sea and tells Raphael they will be leaving Kieran in the water, calling him a ticking time bomb. He asks Raphael to hit Kieran with the oar, but Raphael hits Seth instead and then punches him repeatedly. Kieran tells Raphael to stop and tells him there's a boat. Back in the facility in present day, Gretchen visits Leah. Leah wants to know what this experiment is, and Gretchen tells her that she and the girls are now more fully realized human beings, including Nora. Gretchen then shows CCTV footage of Martha and Tony together. Martha gets out of the wheelchair herself and hugs Tony. Gretchen shows Leah a photo of her before the island, demonstrating her growth. She then tells Leah that she is becoming so savvy she almost got her number. Leah asks Gretchen, "How do you know that I didn't?" Leah kept smiling and tells Gretchen that the damage is done and asks her to answer the buzzing phone. Gretchen picks up the phone and she is shocked to know who is on the other side. The flashback before this shows that Leah has been playing a character all the time. She acted like a child to bring down Gretchen. In the real world, she manages to get her friend to report to the FBI. As Leah gloats in her room, the lights turn off and the doors unlock. When she goes into the corridor, she finds Fatten and they bump into Kieran and Henry. The group then finds a room that looks like a prom night with a disco ball. The boys and girls are reunited, but there's plenty of confusion. Gretchen then can be heard through the speakers being like, "Hey, welcome to the revolution." And Leah tells the others to find him or find Gretchen immediately. So they scour the facility, but it's empty. Meanwhile, Gretchen is stepping on a plane to see her son. She asks her son if he got what he needed to hurt her. Her son apologizes, and the mother and son hug. Gretchen tells him that they forgive but don't forget, and asked him to go on a plane. Gretchen then accuses he accuses Agent Dean of her over by being a mole on the other team. She provides him with a life where he can be reunited with his daughters, but she wants him to silence in return, or he will be in danger. On the plane, Gretchen tells her small team that Phase 3 has begun and a new control group has formed with all bugs and surveillance removed on the island. Gretchen reveals she has someone on the island's side. Meanwhile, the teenagers reach the facility's roof to see where they are on the island. Music plays on the speakers and Leah streams. Seth is revealed to be still on the island with the rest of the kids. He is Gretchen's person on the island. His face is still bruised, but he has a menacing look, and that is when the series was unfortunately canceled. Why didn't you pick it up for another season? You stupid morons, Amazon Prime. And that's gonna be it for the stream. I think I'm gonna give the announcement on Friday. Honestly, oh no, actually, I'm gonna do it now. I've been thinking a lot, And I think I'm going to start a YouTube channel like this. I think I'm going to post movie reviews, starting with Guardians. Um, Starting with Guardians, and then um, talk about like all those movies individual. And then I think I'm going to change the format. So instead of doing that, I'm going to talk about it briefly in depth when I do the spring or do the fall. So I'm going to be trying to make videos on my YouTube channel. I already have a video, but it was for an assignment for English a while ago. But I'm so happy that I'm able to do this. I am really excited to hopefully interact with many people now, talking about my opinions on movies. And there is that. So I want to thank you guys so much for this year. This semester has been really fun. And see you hopefully this month, this summer, and see you in the fall. This has been the Western Star Movie Podcast signing off. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going home.